Today's headline is Reminiscences of a Busy Life. The subheadline says, Stories of the War of 1812, an incident in the Battle of Lake Erie, hard times caused by a backward spring. It says, Mrs. Sally Aldrich does not look to be over 70 years of age, although she acknowledges to the Globe representative that she was born in 1801 in the sunshiny month of May. Her form is erect and her step as elastic as most people's when in middle life. She was piercing tiny bits of silk and satin together for a table scarf a few mornings since as the writer called for a brief talk with her regarding her experience in Vermont when she was sweet 16 and Miss Sally Wilmarth. Yes, this is a very backward spring. I don't remember of one so cold and unpleasant since 1816. That year the crops were cut off in Vermont, and nearly all our provisions had to be brought out of the state. Hi, I should think so. Molasses was $2 per gallon, sugar 50 cents per pound, and flour. Well, flour was so high that it was only the most four-handed folks in the country that could get it. Why, on May 10th of that year, there were snowdrifts 6 feet deep in our town, and the men couldn't get into the woods to tap the maple trees till it was too late for the sap to run. That made all sweetening very high, you see. It cost a great deal to bring it into Vermont before the time of steamers and when they used to ride around the country on horseback. And here, Mrs. Aldrich proceeded to replenish her number 9 needle with sewing silk for her patchwork. Oh no, Vermont was not my native state. I was born in Attleboro, Massachusetts, and we moved to Vermont when I was 6 years old. There was a large family of the Wilmarths in this state, and I never knew as one of them stepped out of the way to disgrace the name. I've worked hard all my life, but hard work ain't the worst thing in the world. Why, I've done every kind of work on a farm but swing the scythe. When word came that the enemy had invaded Newport in the War of 1812, my father was out in the 4-acre lot plowing with his oxen. Let me see. That was in May 1813, the last year of the war, she added reflectively. And he left everything and put the saddle on the horse and rode as fast as possible to the fort, hoping to be of some service to his country. He left the plow halfway across the furrow and the oxen without a driver. But my mother and myself took his work up where he left it, she holding the plow and I driving the oxen. And then we did the planting. When my father reached Newport, he found that it was a false report about the enemy being there, and the next report was that a great battle was being fought on Lake Erie. That was the time when Captain Sanford of Massachusetts changed clothes with Commodore Perry, so the Commodore could turn spy on the British. Captain Sanford was a great friend of my father's, and I remember of hearing him tell about it afterward. He said he felt as big as Cuffy in the Commodore's uniform, ordering the soldiers around. You see, Captain Sanford caught the fish in Lake Erie and went aboard the British ships as well as the American ones to sell them. He said the Commodore looked just as bad as he did himself when he was rigged up in the old fishing clothes, and he played a cunning trick on the enemy when he sold them fish and learned all about their next movements. When did my father return from the battleground, did you ask? Just in time to gather the fall crops. Mother and I reaped the wheat and oats, hoed the corn and potatoes, packed apples, and raked and stowed away the hay after the men had moved it down ready for us to make. But did you never spin yarn for socks and weave cloth, Grandma? Asked my friend Belle, who had called to bring the dear old lady some pieces of silk for her patchwork. Yes, indeed, my young friend. I have carded wool into rolls with hand cards, and spun it into yarn, wove it into handsome cloth, and knitted any number of socks and mittens. Dear me, how nice to be so useful. I wish I had lived in those days, so I might have been good for something besides playing the piano and embroidering, sighed Belle. We used to embroider very fine work in those days, too. Fine lace veils and handkerchiefs, replied Grandma with a significant nod of her head. But we moved back to Massachusetts after the close of the war, and in the year 1820, I was married to Joseph Aldrich of Mendon, Massachusetts. I was 19 years old then. Did I have any children? Yes, 5, and 4 of them are now living. My oldest is about 65. And your husband? Was he older than yourself? Questioned Belle. Yes, older by several years. He was born in 1795 and has been dead 28 years. He died in May, and there was a very hard storm on the day he was buried. My life has been like some stories told in books. I've often wished I had the gift to write. I could tell a story that would be as strange as any ever written in novels. I've got lots of friends all over the state and country. I have pieces of silk and satin come here in large rolls for working up in my quilts and table covers. A great many send to me without letting me know who they are or where they come from. Yes, I have lived in Boston 27 years, and I feel as well and strong as I did 25 years ago. As we arose to go, Belle volunteered to send her some pieces of her silk dresses, which she said she would be proud to have her work into the artistically designed table scarf she was then putting together. After a cordial invitation from Mrs. Aldrich to call again, we left her, feeling that the hour had been pleasantly and profitably spent in her company. This story comes from the great state of Massachusetts, being reported in the Boston Sunday Globe of April 13, 1888. Thank you for joining us today. If you want to continue to uncover all of America's lost and forgotten history, then remember before you leave to hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and remember to like and comment below. And we'll see you next time on Americana Archives.